Hi everyone, it's Stephanie here with a video for My Favorite Things. In today's episode of MFTV, we're going to be creating a card using the new Sensational Stitch Flowers card kit. This is an awesome card kit that includes some really great sentiments, as you can see in this stamp set that I'm showing now, and it also includes some really fun flower dies, and we'll get to those in a minute. But before we do that, we're going to do some stamping and some emboss resist. So I have the white detail embossing powder and the Versamark ink cube that come in the card kit. You're going to get both of these products. And I'm going to do some stamping and embossing on my card design for a little bit of background detail behind my focal area. So what I've done is I'm just went ahead and got the Sending Hug stamp, and I'm going to cut it in half. I know it's a little bit scary for some to do this with their stamps, and you don't have to. I only want to use the word hugs in my card design, and I could have easily just masked off the word sending and then just not stamp that onto the background cardstock panel. But I just personally prefer to cut them apart. I just think it's easier to be able to just stamp with the one word image. And then if I want to use them as they were intended, I can just go ahead and reposition them back together on my acrylic block. So no worries at all. So now that I have the stamp trimmed apart, I have the word hugs. That's the one I want to be using on my card design. I'm going to ink this up with the Versamark ink, and I'm going to stamp it onto the white cardstock panel. Now it's really hard to see what you're doing when you do the Versamark stamping with the white embossing powder, because the Versamark is clear and the white embossing powder is white, and I'm stamping directly onto a white cardstock panel. So I find it easiest to, first of all, after I stamp the word, I like to put the embossing powder onto the stamped image just so that I can kind of see where that powder is. And then I just continue on until I have all of the words stamped and the heat emboss powder on them. And then I just go ahead and hit it with my heat tool. Now I stamped a couple more of the hugs images than I showed on screen. It was just the same process. I was just inking up the stamp and then stamping it and putting the powder on top. And now you can kind of see the shine in the light. Those are all now heat embossed, and I can go ahead and do my emboss resist technique. So I have some distress ink here and an ink blending tool. This is Cracked Pistachio distress ink, and I'm going to speed this up because my hand definitely does not move that fast, and I'm just going to go ahead and add ink to this panel. So I'm just using a very light hand. You don't want to go too heavy at first, just because you don't want to put more ink than you actually want on the cardstock panel, and sometimes if you go too heavy you can leave marks all over your cardstock. So I'm just using a light hand, and I'm going around the whole area where I have done all the stamping and the embossing. And you can see as I add the ink, the white hugs kind of pop out from the background. You couldn't really see them before, but now that we have that green ink kind of all behind there, all of those words pop out from the background and we can see all of them on the card design. So that is just the area that I wanted to do for the background. So now we're going to work on the focal point, which we're going to position directly over top of all of the embossed detail. So I went ahead and cut a circle out of the vellum that comes in the kit, and I also cut out a stitch fishtail banner from the white cardstock, and that is going to be what I'm going to use for my sentiment. Now I also die cut some stitch flowers. So what I did is I cut them directly from the white cardstock, and I just used some Copic markers to add color to them. Now there's so many options you can do with these flowers. They're so fun because they have this great stitch detail. So you can die cut them from the cardstock that comes in the kit. You can die cut them from pattern paper. You can do what I'm doing here and die cut them from white and then just add color with any color medium that you prefer. I like Copics because you can do some ink blending with the markers and kind of give them some dimension by adding some shading and some darker areas. So that's what I'm doing here. And I just did the first two off camera. I colored them in, and I'm just doing the same technique but just with different colors on this flower here. This is the purple flower. And I just went ahead and colored the whole thing first with my lightest color to fully saturate it. And then I used some darker colors and some medium colors on the inside area of the flower. And then I just kind of blended those out with the lightest color. And now I have 3 different size flowers with 3 different designs and 3 different colors that I can use as the focal point on my card. So now it's time to do the sentiment. I'm going to use the same hug stamp that I used for the background area, but this time I'm going to stamp it in black ink, and that's because I just want it to really stand out on the card front. So I went ahead and stamped that towards the end area of the banner, and I'm going to trim that down when it's time to put it on the card. To add a little bit more detail to the side area of the card, you'll see when I start to put it together, I did take out a piece of the craft polka dot paper from the paper pad that comes in the card kit, and I'm going to trim a piece of that down to put on the side of my card base. And I also trimmed down a piece of the green cardstock that comes in the kit. It's a very thin strip, and we're just going to use that as an accent piece on the finished card. I used one of the craft cardstock pieces that come in the kit to create my card base. It's a top folding 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base. And I trimmed down the polka dot craft paper, and I'm going to start to assemble my card now that I have all the pieces ready to go. So first thing I'm doing is just putting adhesive on the craft polka dot paper, and I'm adding that to the right hand side of my card base. And I'm just adding that directly onto the card with adhesive and then just trimming the excess off. I took my stamped and embossed panel and I trimmed some of the side of that one off so it's not as wide as the finished card. And I'm just going ahead and adhering that onto the card. I'm positioning it over to the left-hand side so that it will show that polka dot paper that we've added on the right-hand side. And then I'm just going to push down firmly on that just because it is a little bit warped from the embossing that we did on it. So I did put quite a bit of adhesive on that panel. Now I took my vellum piece there that I cut into a circle and I trimmed a little bit of the edge off so that it has a straight edge. And I'm just putting a very tiny bit of adhesive along that straight edge. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to adhere this onto my card, positioning it over top of the hugs. And I'm going to put that little bit of adhesive area that I've added right along the edge of that polka dot detail, because I'm going to be adding this green strip so I know that I will cover up any of the adhesive that I added to that vellum circle. So I adhered that, and then I'm just using some liquid glue since this is a pretty thin piece, and I'm adding the glue to the strip, and then I'm going to adhere that over top. Now I added the vellum piece onto the card just to kind of mute down a bit of the background. I wanted the flowers to really stand out against the background, and since one of them is kind of similar in color to the background color, I thought that the vellum would help to break that up a bit. So now I'm just creating my cluster of flowers and putting my sentiment banner on as well. So I trimmed that banner down so that it fit on the card front, and I positioned the pink flower first because I knew that one was going to be adhered directly onto the card, and then I put the banner over top of that and adhered that down as well. Now for the aqua and the purple flowers, I adhered those together first, and then I added some foam adhesive to the back of those just so they kind of have some dimension and lift off the card a bit. So once I had all the foam adhesive on there, I took off the backing of all the foam pieces, and then I'm just positioning this over top of the banner so that you can't see the end of the banner at all, and that pink flower shows through on the right-hand side. And then to finish off the card and add a little bit more detail around the embossed hugs words that we did on the background, I'm just using some silver glitter Nuvo drops. It's just like a liquid glitter glue. And I'm adding a few drops of this around that focal area with the flowers and the sentiment banner. And this is just going to add a little bit more dimension to our card. And then that's going to complete today's card. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. And now comes the part where we get to give one of these awesome kits away to one random commenter on this video. So if you want a chance to win the new Sensational Stitch Flowers card kit, please leave a comment on this video down below, and we will pick one random winner to win a kit, and we will announce that winner in next week's episode of MFTV. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.